Here we are. Let's see if we can give a few people some time to jump on here. Some of you have been me. It's been a little hard to find me, so I'm going to give you a chance to jump on here and see if you can find me. I'm actually going to do a little experiment and go on another tab and see if it brings up the notification, or if I go to my homepage, what do I see at the very top? I just want to see here. Yep, it's got me right at the very top. Okay. Hopefully everyone will find that. Good morning. I know it's Sunday. There's people all over already worshiping and praising the Lord, already hearing his word. I woke up in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep, so I put on a service that was starting in Singapore that was live, and heard the most beautiful worship. Oh my goodness, songs that I never heard before. I'm going to look into finding these songs. And then, Pastor Joseph Prince coming on to teach. So different time zones, but lots of people basically on the same page as we are, coming into a day of recognizing that we are the body of Christ and that we gather together, and it's going to be good. Let me just see something here. It's going to be good. All right. Well, I don't see anyone on here yet. It's been a couple of minutes. We'll see if people can find me. All right. So say that it's really cool. Our even though we're having to stay at home, we're still meeting together, and there's really cool online services. I just am so grateful that the body of Christ just keeps marching forward, and all taking the time to hear from the Lord. So, okay, here we are in the book of Genesis, and we're in chapter 7. And chapter 7 is about the flood, the great flood that involved Noah. And yesterday we talked about Noah. That was really a beautiful understanding of Noah's name. Written backwards in Hebrew is the word grace. And how wonderful that he was able to be the person that ushered in an era of grace. And just love it so much. So today we're going to read about the great flood. And we're going to start in chapter 7, verse 1. It says, "The day came when Yahweh said to Noah, 'Come into the ark.'" Yesterday we talked all about the dimensions of the ark, and just how Noah had to follow very specific directions, and how the ark was a type of Jesus Christ and how we come into him and find our safety. And anyway, so now this is the real deal. It's going to happen. God's going to fulfill his word, and all the naysayers are going to get washed into the sea. Not a good thing. The day came when Yahweh said to Noah, "Come into the ark, you and your entire household, for I have found you to be the only one righteous in my eyes in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all the clean animals." Okay. I think people are still having trouble finding me, which I don't know what to do for them. Yeah, even when I look on my phone, the first thing that I find when I go to my timeline is this live video. So if you're on here, let me know. Type a hello or something. Okay. Take with you 7 pairs of all the clean animals, both male and female, and 1 pair of the unclean animals, both male and female. Take 7 pairs of flying birds of all kinds, male and female, because you got to have one of each to procreate, right? That's God's order. Take 7 pairs of flying birds of all kinds, male and female, to make sure that they survive on the earth. For in 7 days, I will send rain and flood the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. Every living thing that I made, I will wipe off the face of the earth. Once again, we're showing here with these words that I'm emphasizing that it's God that does all of this, that He is the one that is completely in charge. Noah obeyed all that Yahweh had commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the great flood came on the earth. Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives, that's 8 people, boarded the ark to escape the flood, 2 of each animal, the male and the female, clean and unclean, large, very large actually, and small, along with birds and crawling things, very small things. Entered the ark with Noah as God had commanded. Then 7 days later, massive floodwaters covered the earth. Hello, Gail. I'm glad you found your way in. Massive floodwaters covered the earth. It started in the 600th year of Noah's life. He'd already lived 600 years. Can you imagine he did all of this building when he was in his 500th century? I mean, when he was in the years of being between 500 and 600? How in the world? It started in the 600th year of Noah's life in the 2nd month on the 17th day. And on that day, all the fountains of the subterranean deep cracked open and burst up through the ground. Heaven's floodgates were opened, and heavy rains fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day, Noah and his wife, their sons Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and their wives entered safely into the ark. Pairs of every species of animals entered with them, wild animals, domesticated animals, large and small, and every species of bird and winged creatures. Every animal that has the breath of life came into the ark with Noah. Both male and female went inside as God had commanded Noah, and Yahweh himself, again, here's God doing the main actions of the Yah. He speaks, and the way it happens. Yahweh himself shut them in. Can you imagine? That was a supernatural act. There was no way for them to shut the door themselves and to seal it. He had to do it. And that is an amazing miracle. For 40 days, the flood engulfed the earth. So for 40 days, the waters rose, and the swelling floodwaters lifted up the ark until it rose high above the ground. It was, can you imagine? The waters were just lifting it up off of the ground, this huge, like a building going up off of the ground. The swelling floodwaters lifted the ark up until it rose high above the ground, and the raging flood completely inundated the earth. The flood completely inundated the earth, but the ark floated safely, drifting upon the surface of the water. Jesus, our ark, our safety. It floated safely in this turbulent, incredibly gigantic flood that covered the earth. It drifted upon the surface of the water until the highest mountains were completely submerged beneath the rising waters. Do you know there are many high mountains on the earth right now? I just looked up a little bit of trivia about that. And I'm going to just take Mount Everest as an example because that's one of the highest, if not the highest mountain. Mount Everest is 29,029 feet high. And that means that's how high the waters had to rise to cover the tops of these mountains. The waters, it says, rose over 22 feet above the highest mountain. So it would have been about 29,051 feet if we just look at Mount Everest at that point, that peak, how high it would have been, the waters. So let's think about our ceiling here in our house being 9 feet. Does that give you some perspective what 29,000 feet is? We live in Redding and we love to look up at Mount Shasta. I should have looked up, let me see what the height of Mount Shasta is. I'll speak into my phone. What is the height of Mount Shasta in Redding? So it says it's 14,179 feet. So it's half the size of Mount Everest. But if you look up at the mountain here in Mount Shasta, it looks really big and really high. So imagine the waters going up to that tip top, if you live here locally and understand what I'm saying, and then double that and add a few hundred feet on top of that. And it was entirely submerging the globe. I think some people are jumping on here. I see the little things clicking off. So hi, Kathy. Yes. Hi, Denise. Yeah. So this is a large act of God. And he himself shut them into the ark so that they would be safe in these flood waters. The waters rose over 22 feet above the highest mountains. Every living thing on the earth perished. Everything he created. So man, woman, children. This is where it gets heavy. Everyone died. Perished is just a nice word for died. All of the wickedness that they had been only pursuing died with them, and all the corruption into the earth. So the earth itself was corrupted. All the plants, every living creature that walked had to be killed. And this was an act of God. This was a response to their choices. Every living thing on the earth perished. Domesticated animals, wild animals, birds, everything that moved on the earth, and all mankind perished. Everything perished. God is holy. Every animal on earth with all the breath of life in its nostrils died. All life on earth was blotted out. All that he had made, animals large and small, wild and domesticated, birds and reptiles, including humanity, was wiped off the face of the earth. Only Noah was left. Only Noah was left behind. Do you remember Noah? That word spelled backwards means grace. Only grace, the grace of God, through Noah was typifying it, was being ushered into the era that we call now the era of grace. And those who were in the ark with him were spared, and the waters covered the earth for 150 days, almost half of a year. So let's say about 5 months, the waters covered the earth. They were in that ark floating. Can you imagine? I hope some of you, I'll remind you if you weren't on here yesterday, I hope you looked on my timeline. We talked all about the most beautiful exhibit and museum in Kentucky where you can go with your family for a vacation, or you can just look at it on my timeline and get an understanding of what the ark looked like on the inside and the outside. You can walk through it. You can see all the rooms. You can see all the preparations that they had to make for food and places for the animals. There's 3 stories to the ark, 3 layers, if you will, all the compartments, all the places that they had to keep the poop. Did anyone ever think about that? What was that like? Was that on the very bottom part? You can't just throw it out the window. And that's all the animals, not just the human waste. Okay, enough about that. But anyway, details. I wanted to just go over a few things in chapter 7 because that was all of chapter 7. And just read a couple of points from the notes with you. So beautiful here, this interaction in verse 1 where God told Noah, or God said to him, come into the ark. It's an invitation from the Lord, and we don't know how he spoke to Noah. It's just, can you imagine how he might have said this to him? It's time, Noah, come on in, come into the ark and bring, your family, and bring everything in with you that you're going to need, and all of the animals, unclean and clean. He invites him into the ark. And Noah did it. He moved with faith. Wow. Everything God said, he moved with faith, and he acted on any revelation that was given to him from the Lord. And that is such a great example for us. Are we acting on the revelation that the Lord gives us? Do we respond to God, or do we respond in action when God speaks to us? That's what we're supposed to be doing too. The implication is that God is in the ark. He's already inside. Oh, that's a beautiful picture, waiting for Noah and his family to enter in and come to him. He has always gone before us, hasn't he? And he knows what we will face. The Hebrew word for come is used in contemporary Jewish weddings and songs. Come to me. I've not heard a song in a Jewish wedding, so I don't know what that would sound like, but it's that beckoning of the bride saying to the bridegroom saying to the bride, come to me. And God needed Noah. It's such a beautiful thing. He was the only righteous one that could save mankind. God, I love this little part in here where he says that God is continually looking for vessels like you and I, whom he can bring salvation and deliverance through. Wow. We can be those vessels of honor for him. Um, the seven animal pairs that he instructed Noah to bring were for sacrifices that they would be offering to God. Um, and the number 40, the 40 days and nights that they were inside the ark, is a representation of testing, but it also represents purification. So we can think of a 40-day test or a 40-day fast, but it's also a period of purification. That's the purpose. The purification happens within the testing period. So God bless us. In verse 11, it talks about how it started in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month on the 17th day. So we actually have an actual date of when the flood began. It was year 1656 from the day of creation. And it says, on that day, all the fountains of the subterranean deep cracked open and burst up through the ground. Heaven's floodgates were opened, and heavy rains fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. So I had always been taught or imagined the flood coming down from the heavens, but I actually had never seen this before, about the subterranean deep cracking open and the water bursting up through the earth as well. So that's kind of a double whammy. And it brings us back to chapter 1, verse 5, when God separated the water in the sky from the water in the earth and kind of drew boundaries around where the water would lay and where the land would lay. And we were talking about how God brings order and boundaries to chaos. And he's not unfamiliar with chaos, because that's what he was dealing with in the very beginning when he was bringing everything into order and creating things. But it's as if here in verse 11, that he was returning the earth back into a place of chaos. And it was like, I don't know what he was thinking, what God must have been going through to issue all of these orders to bring the subterranean waters up out of the earth and to open the floodgates of heaven, and what that felt like to him. It reminds me of the scripture we read yesterday about how God was so saddened and grieved because the things that he had created were ruined and corrupted. And it's just, it's really a moment, gosh, this really happened. We talked about that yesterday. I showed you a picture of Mount Ararat where the ark is currently resting, proving the veracity of the Bible, that it's true, that the story happened, that the Bible isn't just a bunch of fables or made up stories. Anyway, it was as though God returned the earth back into chaos. He once separated the waters and raised up the dry ground, and now he's covering the earth again with water, and he's removing the separation and the boundaries. Oh, that he spoke himself into existence. He's crushing all of that now. I don't know. I just had this thought about him creating the new heaven and the new earth. And there's going to be a day, I'm going to lead us into that point in a moment anyway, but there's going to be a day when he's going to have to recreate things again. That day's coming when the new heaven and the new earth will be built. He knows how to shift everything. We talked about how he closed the door of the ark supernaturally. Again, this is his care. This is his covenant keeping, who he is as God. And He is the friend of sinners. This is who he is. He shut them up in himself, so to speak, and carried them through this enormous testing period. Okay, so then we were talking about how the mountains were covered all the way to the top of the very top of the highest mountains, and because it includes all the mountains, it's referring to a universal flood, not just a regional flood. So the entire earth was flooded, and that is huge. In the days of Noah, the wicked were taken away, swept off the earth by the flood, and it was only the righteous that could remain. So I wanted to look here. Myself will be off camera for me, but I wanted to look up the word Noah in the New Testament, because there's a few verses that talk about the days of Noah. And I'll read them to you. Matthew 24:37, for it will be exactly like it was in the days of Noah when the Son of Man appears. Matthew 24:39, they didn't realize the end was near until Noah entered the ark, and then suddenly the flood came and took them all away in judgment. It will happen the same way when the Son of Man appears. In Luke 3:23 through 38, it gives the lineage or the ancestry of Jesus Christ, and Noah is included in there's about 100 or I don't know, 70 names here, and one of them is Noah. The same things that happened in the days of Noah, Luke 17, will take place in the days of the Son of Man. Verse 27, they were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying, and they were giving in marriage until the day Noah boarded the ark and the devastating flood came and swept them all away. Hebrews 11:7 says, faith opened Noah's heart. This is so beautiful. This is the chapter on faith, and they go through and talk about different people in the Bible and how they used their faith. And this is about Noah. It says, faith opened Noah's heart to receive revelation and warnings from God about what was coming, even things that had never yet been seen. But he stepped out in reverent obedience to God and built an ark that would save him and his family. By his faith, the world was condemned, but Noah received God's gift of righteousness that comes by believing. 1 Peter 3:20 says that because of their disobedience of long ago, for during the time of Noah, God patiently waited while the ark was being prepared. But only a few were brought safely through the floodwaters. A total of 8 souls survived. And then lastly in 2 Peter 2:5, and he did not spare the former world in the days of Noah when he sent a flood to destroy a depraved world. Although he protected Noah, the preacher of righteousness, along with 7 members of his family. There is one mention of Noah in Isaiah as well in the Old Testament, and that is where it's reiterated that God would not again cover the earth with a flood as he did in the days of Noah. He will never be angry again to that extent. So, okay. Those are the verses that I found about Noah's life, and they're likened to the day of the Lord's return and the way that people will be not expecting his return and not, during this pandemic, there's so much there is so much turning to the Lord right now. It's in the church, and even people who have not been following him are turning towards him. So I think there's going to be a recovery period and a normalcy period. I'm not saying how long all of this will happen, if it's years or decades or what it is. But there's the way that the earth will be going on is that people will be in crowds. They obviously won't be isolated like we are now. They'll be having ceremonies like marriages. They'll be eating and drinking. They'll have food. The earth will be going on as normal, flourishing, doing well, so to speak. And then there will be a sudden coming of the Lord. And so no one knows the day or the hour of when that happens, but we can see that God at least has given us some points, talking points with other people to help them understand and help us to understand what's going to be happening in the future. And we can, we've just, read so clearly about this story of Noah and Noah's Ark and the flood. And it's a great way to introduce people to Jesus, a great way in our time to tell people that we know and love who he is, who Jesus is, and how he wants to be that safe place that he's inviting them in. And to bring about the warning also of what the scripture says, that it will be as in the days of Noah. And to be able to bring these two periods of history together, to talk to people and to explain to them what God in his mercy is giving us clues and understanding about, so that we can be prepared. So that the Bible talks about two people in a field working, and one, off they go, the Lord snatches them, and the other one is still in the field looking around, and this person's gone, and they're looking around wondering what just happened. So while we're in the field, let's talk to that person and tell them what's going to be happening, so that they're not left here. All right. Happy Sunday. Bless you all. We'll see you tomorrow in chapter 8. And we'll see you tonight if you want to pray. And this is let's see. Today is April 19th. I don't know if I put the right date on here. But that means that we have been doing this for 19 days. That's amazing. So we have about, I don't know how many days are in this month, but we have about 11 more days of April. And I think that God is going to be I believe that he's going to be opening up doors for us to be released into life as we liked before, going shopping and going out to the beach and stuff. So we'll see what happens after the month of April with this book, is what I'm saying, because I think people will be back at work. All right. Well, love you guys. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Bye-bye.